Thank you. So many of us here in the audience are developers in one form or another. We're all using software to solve problems within our businesses. Software development today, I think, is more rapid, more dynamic, more distributed than it's ever been. You know, we're constantly under pressure to deliver capability as quickly as possible in whatever context we operate in within our companies. We're trying to do that in a world that's more distributed, both in our teams and how we operate, and geographically and technically in how we build those solutions. And we're trying to be able to constantly adapt to change. This is stressful, right? It's hard to balance these pressures that we're constantly under. As a developer, at least what I find is when you're under that kind of pressure, you're tempted sometimes to figure out, how do I prioritize my work? How do I figure out what I don't have to do right now so that I can focus on moving forward? And it's often really tempting when you're building software to take some of the hard problems of scalability and availability and security and kind of push them to later in the cycle. To focus first on building my function and my application and worry later about how I'm going to solve these thorny issues. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you did this and you got to the end and you realized that this thing you built wasn't really going to work the way you thought it was, and you're going to spend every night up trying to keep it alive, and that adding security at the end is a really bad idea that might make you rewrite the whole thing. That's a pretty anxious moment as a developer. So how can we do this differently? You know, I think the trick is, how do we stay focused on the core capability we're trying to build without falling into the trap of not considering the environment that we ultimately have to run in? How do you balance these two kind of competing demands as a developer? And I think the answer to that is to have a platform that supports you as a developer, that tries to take those hard problems and bake them in to the environment you operate in, not so that you don't have to think about them at all, but so that you can be more successful more easily solving those problems. So as a developer, I think that platform has to enable you to be successful in your continuous integration and delivery, that you can set up a process that actually works for you to constantly make change. You need flexible infrastructure so that you can decide where you need to run and take advantage of whether it's public cloud or in your data center, take advantage of infrastructure easily. You need security to be built in from the beginning, and you need portability so you can move your workload where you need to. Now, we're here at KubeCon, so no surprise. I think Kubernetes is the foundation layer of that platform. And I think we're all familiar with the capabilities it provides. Kubernetes, I think, really gives us that base that we need to be successful with CI/CD, with scalability, with availability, and management of those problems within the development lifecycle. But is Kubernetes enough? You know, I think the first problem that we run into when we decide to use Kubernetes is, how do I actually run Kubernetes? Like, have I traded off one problem for another? And that's where I think bringing cloud into the picture is really powerful. Having Kubernetes as a service delivered through public cloud allows me as a developer not to have to worry about how to install and run Kubernetes. And we saw today with our Pernis discussion about the roadmap and the pace of Kubernetes. All of these technologies are moving very quickly. So do I have to be the one to manage that? I think with services like the IBM Cloud Container Service and services in other clouds, you can get a Kubernetes environment as a developer and be successful very quickly with having a high-scale, highly available platform for running your apps. But what about security? I think security is actually, for a lot of developers, the really hard one. Because doing security well has a lot of dimensions to it. You need a secure runtime. You need a secure networking within your infrastructure. You need to deal with isolation. You need to protect the traffic coming into your applications. You need a secure software delivery pipeline so that you know what you're running and whether the software itself has vulnerabilities in it. And you need a secure networking layer that allows the interactions between those applications to be secure. At IBM, we spent a lot of our time thinking about how do we help developers, specifically enterprise developers, be successful building secure systems. Just to give you a few examples, you need visibility into the vulnerabilities of your application stacks, both software vulnerabilities and human-induced vulnerabilities. Like, you have bad password rules. You have SSH open in your container, so it's easy to get in. How have you configured your software to be secure. And as a developer, you want to be able to have someone tell you that, so you have visibility into it. You might even want to use that information to control what you can deploy to production. And I think projects like the Grapheus project are going to help us have that kind of policy. You want secure infrastructure, things like trusted computing and being able to ensure that the hardware you're running on hasn't been tampered with, is secure, and that you know what you're running. And finally, things like Istio, which I think has tremendous potential to help give developers the tools they need to control the interactions between their services to ensure secure communication between those services. So there's many tools that are now available as part of the community to help us as developers build secure applications, build scalable and reliable applications. At IBM, we're delivering those capabilities in public cloud. We're delivering those capabilities on-premise as well in private cloud so that your developers can be successful building secure apps. Thank you very much.